Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, today we are jumping right into an absolutely incredible mystery, one where marine biology, genetics, and a 3,000-year-old spiritual story collide in literally the most unexpected way possible. We're exploring a totally fascinating account that bridges the gap between modern acoustic science and ancient faith. We'll be looking at the findings of a marine biology and genetics professor, Dr. Nafisa, who stumbled upon something deep in the waters of the Pacific Ocean that completely defied conventional evolutionary science. It's a story of data, DNA, and an ancient prayer, and I am so excited to guide you through this one.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this is exactly where our story starts. Deep in a super remote region of the Pacific Ocean, researchers were out there monitoring the behaviors of sperm whales. But they noticed an anomaly. Every single morning, exactly corresponding with the local time of Fajr, which is the Islamic dawn prayer, the whales would produce a highly unusual 30-second series of clicks. And here's the thing, this specific acoustic pattern was never heard at any other time of the day. For decades, the scientific consensus was pretty firm, that whales only make sounds for two reasons, right? Echolocation for hunting or communication for mating. But this dawn chorus, it didn't fit either category. It was entirely unique, leaving scientists with a massive question. What exactly were they listening to?
To unravel this whole mystery, we're going to follow a quick roadmap. We'll start with the dawn whale mystery, move on to hidden signals and DNA, then the ocean synthetic sound experiment, look at the science of acoustic epigenetics, and finally, faith, evolution, and DNA.
So, Part 1, the dawn whale mystery, a 30-second anomaly in the Pacific. Aboard the research ship studying this wild 30-second anomaly, we had two very, very different perspectives. On one side, you've got Dr. Nafisa. She's a professor of marine biology and genetics and a woman of deep personal faith who genuinely believed the whales were communicating something profound. Then, on the other side, we have Dr. Hardy. He's the leader of the research expedition, an evolutionary scientist, and an atheist. He firmly maintained the strict biological view that these clicks were purely utilitarian, strictly for mating and hunting, and absolutely nothing more. To him, Dr. Nafisa was just projecting her own religious beliefs onto totally random animal noises.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how Dr. Nafisa actually analyzed the sound. She didn't just casually listen to it, she meticulously looked at the spectrograms of these 30-second morning clicks. When she analyzed the exact intervals between the clicks, she noticed they formed a pattern, almost like Morse code. And when she mapped it out, these intervals beautifully correlated to Arabic letters, Aleph, Lam, Ha. When read continuously, that phonetic pattern translated to a very specific, famous Islamic prayer. La ilaha illa anta, subhanaka inni kuntu minaz zalimin. Now, according to both Islamic and biblical traditions, this is the exact prayer or Du'a of Prophet Yunus, also known as Jonah, called out from the belly of the whale in the absolute darkness. Pretty mind-blowing, right?
Let's move on to Part 2, hidden signals in DNA. Decoding the junk DNA.
Finding a pattern in a sound is one thing, but finding its biological source, that's a whole different ballgame. Nafisa needed to know if this was just some learned behavior passed down through generations of whales, or if it's something way deeper. So she took blood samples from the local whales and began sequencing their non-coding DNA. This is the stuff that's often dismissively referred to as junk DNA. To analyze this, Dr. Nafisa used this truly fascinating process called sonification. Essentially, it's a sound-to-protein algorithm. It takes the sequence of the 4 nitrogen bases of DNA, adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine, and converts their specific molecular frequencies directly into an audio track. Basically, she was taking the physical genetic code of the whale and playing it out loud, like a piece of sheet music, just to see what it sounded like.
The result was absolutely staggering. When she ran that sonification algorithm, Dr. Nafisa found a specific sequence of exactly 1,500 base pairs hidden right there within that non-coding DNA. And when she converted it to audio, it perfectly matched the Dawn dialect. Literally a perfect match. The 30-second morning click wasn't just some morning habit. It was a physical genetic feature. These whales were hardwired at a cellular level to produce this exact sequence of sounds. Let's move to the timeline and see how this builds, because it gets even crazier. Dr. Nafisa calculated the mutation rate of this specific DNA segment. By tracing the genetic divergence backward, she discovered that this exact epigenetic mutation originated in a single whale approximately 3,000 years ago. From there, it became a genetic trait passed down to every single generation all the way to the present day. And wouldn't you know it, 3,000 years ago is the exact historical era attributed to the story of Prophet Yunus inside the whale.
All right, Part 3, Ocean Synthetic Sound Experiment.
testing the genetic memory.
Now, when presented with all these findings, Dr. Hardy totally mocked them. He argued, whales don't understand Arabic and DNA definitely doesn't carry written prayers. He basically accused her of ruining the expedition's solid research with religious fantasy. But Nafisa, staying completely objective, proposed a brilliant real-world test to actually prove her theory of genetic memory. Here are the meticulous steps she took. First, she isolated that specific 1500-base non-coding DNA sequence. Second, she created an exact synthetic RNA copy of it right there in the lab. Third, she converted that synthetic biological code back into sonic waves. And finally, she broadcast those waves directly into the ocean using a hydrophone, specifically at Fajr time, to see exactly how the whales would react to hearing their own pure genetic code.
The first day she played the synthetic wave, well, absolutely nothing happened. Crickets. But on the second day, at dawn, the ocean responded. A massive pod of about 40 sperm whales approached the research vessel, and they didn't just swim by. They deliberately formed this giant circle around the ship, swimming in a really slow, purposeful rotation. It was incredibly similar to the tawaf, the circular procession around the Kaaba. As they circled, their clicks totally synchronized. Through the hydrophones, that synchronized rhythm sounded strikingly, undeniably similar to the Arabic phrase Subhanallah, which translates to glory be to God. It was a wildly emotional, awe-inspiring moment.
Which brings us to part 4, the science of acoustic epigenetics, how sound alters cellular codes.
So over the next 3 months, Dr. Nafisa dove headfirst into the hard science to bridge this gap between ancient story and modern biophysics. She had to explain exactly how a human voice from 3,000 years ago could literally rewrite an animal's genetic code. And what she uncovered was a fascinating biological mechanism. That DNA sequence she isolated, it actually generates specific heat shock proteins, or HSPs. And these proteins specifically sensitize the whale's acoustic lobe to these exact frequencies. The working theory suggests that 3,000 years ago, the sheer mechanical vibration of the prophet's voice resonating within the whale's body tissue created a permanent epigenetic mark on its cells. What's super interesting is that Dr. Hardy actually verified that this completely mirrors a known modern physics process called sonication. That's where sound waves create tiny nanobubbles in liquids that can literally penetrate cell membranes and alter DNA. So the prayer didn't just reach the whale's ears, it physically, mechanically imprinted onto its cellular biology.
And finally, part 5, faith, evolution, and DNA, the emotional realization.
So the scientific data was really solidifying, but the emotional impact of this discovery, that was just as profound. One morning, as the dawn call to prayer played, a little baby whale approached the ship and produced that exact same click sequence. It was a beautiful moment that brought Dr. Nafisa to tears, deeply connecting her decades of rigorous genetic research with her profound faith. She captured this realization so beautifully in her diary. She wrote, "I have studied DNA for 10 years, but today I understood. When God sent Yunus into the belly of the whale, it wasn't just Yunus's prayer that was accepted, the whale was accepted too. Because that whale carried a prophet's prayer inside its body, and that prayer entered its genes. Whales do not know what they sing, but their DNA knows. They hold on to that tune at dawn today as if the entire species is a living tasbih, a living glorification."
So the crucial point here is how this overwhelming evidence challenged the strict evolutionary perspective on the ship. Dr. Hardy initially viewed any DNA anomaly as just a purely random genetic mutation, a mistake of evolution. But Dr. Nafisa countered that with a glaring piece of evidence. We have a perfectly structured musical frequency, unique to this pod, maintained flawlessly for 3,000 years, that precisely matches an ancient text. She posed the ultimate question to him. Could a completely random accidental mutation really maintain such perfect, specific music across millennia of evolution, or is it a conserved biological marker?
Picture this. It's the final night of the expedition. They're under a bright, full moon. The ocean is completely still. The two scientists stood on the deck and listened to the hydrophone one last time. And from the deep came the collective night call of the pod. It was this profound, deep sigh echoing across the massive ocean. For Nafisa, this wasn't just random animal noise. It was the acoustic resonance of a 3,000-year-old rescue, witnessed by the whale and recorded forever in its very biology.
The sheer weight of the scientific data and the reality of what they just experienced had a massive impact on Dr. Hardy. The atheist evolutionary scientist actually made a stunning concession to Dr. Nafisa right before they returned home. He looked at her and said, "I believe in evolution,
But this whale showed me, at the very end of evolution, there might be a creator who wrote the code. The impeccable, undeniable organization of the whale's DNA forced him to totally reconsider the line between random biological mutation and intentional design.
So what actually happened to all this research? Well, Dr. Nafisa's expedition resulted in a legitimate, peer-reviewed paper published in the super prestigious journal Science, under the title Acoustic Epigenetics. Now, as is pretty standard in the scientific community, the religious and historical correlations were obviously omitted from the formal publication. However, the purely biological findings absolutely stood their ground. Her research team successfully and officially identified this segment as a conserved region in the sperm whale's DNA, forever logging this acoustic genetic memory into the official scientific record.
Dr. Nafisa left us with a parting thought in her final lecture, and I think it's the perfect way to wrap up this explainer. If the mechanical vibrations of an ancient prayer can literally leave a 3,000-year-old biological fingerprint in the DNA of a whale, if we can actually read their genetic memory, what echoes of the past are hiding inside our own DNA? What ancient biological memories are we carrying around with us right now? It's a completely fascinating intersection of biology, physics, and history that leaves us looking at the natural world and ourselves in a completely different light. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring the incredible codes hidden all around us.